What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Passionate DJ Podcast. I'm, of course, your host, David Michael, and the whole crew is here. Tony, Tripp, and Mo. What's up, fellas?
What up? What's going on?
We are here to talk about the infamous Fyre Festival, which we talked about, I'd say middle of the year, last year or so. And, of course, there's been some renewed interest in this with the Netflix and Hulu documentaries both coming out. And so this is sort of a reaction episode. We've all watched both documentaries by now.
Yep.
And we're just here to kind of share our thoughts. So
I can sum it up in 2 words. Shit show.
Absolutely.
And that brings to an end.
Right. Now a word from our sponsor.
That was easy. Yeah, so I guess we should sort of start with the sort of a summarization of what Fyre Festival was to catch people up for, who've been living under a rock here. And by the way, we should start with, spoiler alert, if you have any intention on watching either of these documentaries, you might want to watch that first before watching this
pause
episode.
right now.
Yeah.
And if you also have tickets, you might
cancel.
You might want to shut it off right now too.
So this was 2017, I think April, May, something like that.
April 27th was when it was supposed to have taken place.
And it was sort of a co-venture between this guy Billy McFarland and Ja Rule and
murder.
It was murder. This was supposed to be a sort of elitist festival experience on an island that was really talked up and had this big promotional backing behind it, and just turned into a total shit show. And most people have seen, if they haven't seen the documentaries, they at least saw the news stories or saw the late night hosts or the memes talk about it. Just ended up being a total mess. So
Hashtag rich kid problems or something like that, right? That was like the big thing going around.
Yeah.
So I guess we can. Do we want to start with just a quick vote on which one we liked better, or do you have thoughts on that?
Netflix.
You like Netflix better?
I like the Netflix one bit better.
Well, I think if you want to see millennials being made fun of, watch the Hulu one. If you want to run into town square with the torch and pitchforks, watch the Netflix one.
Yeah, well, and I think it's important to note that I think the biggest difference between the two is that Fuck Jerry or Jerry Media was behind one of them, but not the other one.
Correct.
But the other one that Jerry Media wasn't involved in actually has interviews with
Billy McFarland.
Yeah. Dipshit McFarland.
So there's questionable ethics with either one,
right?
If you're being honest, just because of that.
Yeah, and I mean, in its essence, they're trying to sell their product, so they're going to spin it one way or the other.
Yeah.
So also, it is a documentary, but it is written with a skewed vision, whichever one you decide to watch.
The Hulu one did feel a little bit like a hit piece on millennials.
Yeah.
It was very heavy on that from the get-go. I liked how they presented. So they kind of started the documentary presenting, an argument about here's what social media is doing to us. Here's what Instagram culture is doing to young people.
Yeah.
Right. And I appreciated that part of the Hulu.
The kickoff, and they talk about the power of
influencers. Yeah.
Well, and not just the influencers, but then the people actually behind these marketing campaigns. I mean, the one guy, he doesn't even work for Jerry Media anymore. But when they flat out asked him, "Who's to blame for all of this?" And he just kind of, with a smirk and a shrug, goes, "We all are.
Yeah,
everyone is. Like everybody who had a hand in it." So I think there's enough blame to go around, because at some point, if you're involved in something that fucked up,
you
know that something is that fucked up.
Yeah.
All that being said, Billy McFarland was clearly just a scam artist at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, especially I think the Hulu one went a little bit deeper into all of his other business ventures and all of the other things that he had going on in the background.
Yeah, it kind of gave you some, like you said, background to set you up for what was about to occur with his whole Fyre Festival.
Right.
Yeah, I do think it was worth it to watch both of them. I'm glad I watched both of them.
Same.
But the Netflix one definitely, it dives a little deeper into the making it feel like the emergency that it was, and showing how it really screwed over the people on the island, the workers, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and but also the employees for Fyre Media as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting because they played that internal phone call that the team had after shit hit the fan.
Billy, do we have to worry about the FBI? I don't know.
Yeah. No, and he was like, "You guys got calls from the FBI? Who else got calls?" And someone's like, "I did."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was the whole thing. The Fyre idea started with this brand
app
that was going to be an app where you could kind of book artists or big names and
book talent,
kind of talent, and it made it accessible to people.
Yeah, like,
so if you have $300,000 and you want to book blah 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 to play your bar mitzvah or whatever,
then
you could do that.
And
I actually thought that was kind of cool.
Same.
The idea of it was
douchey, but people have the money to do that sort of thing,
right?
You know.
But and the funny part is that now Ja Rule just basically took that app and now has flipped it and now basically has the same thing. Now he's just calling it something different. So the whole thing about one of my takeaways was that how shitty is it that like this was actually a really great idea from a promotional event organizing. Like if somebody was able to pull that off, that would have been tits, right? But now that this guy has fundamentally destroyed, the entire premise, the entire plot, the entire thing, the next person who actually does come and try and do it legitly, like, now it's going to be like Fyre 2.0, even if it's no matter who it is and no matter how much money they throw at it and how much planning and infrastructure they build behind it and all of that stuff.
So I guess we should clarify the idea with the event itself was to basically take this entire small island in the Caribbean and turn it into this sort of paradise. And they made all these promises about what was the price of the tickets?
The entry price was $2,000. And it went up to $20,000, I believe.
I think they had some. Look it up there on the screen towards the top. I think they talk about ticket prices.
Oh, the $500 for
they had like a general
admission
day
pass. Yeah.
But then it went up to like $12,000 for VIP passes, and then the documentaries talked about
like $20,000,
like houses that they had available for $250,000. I was like,
no, they had the boat that one of them where you had a private chef.
Yeah.
And
private jets, and they were just making all these promises and
like over the top.
Basically, the scam part of it comes in with Billy basically just taking money and funneling it into the next thing and funneling it into the next thing and scamming people out of it to fund his next part of the scam. And it reminded me a lot of I was telling my wife, it reminded me of someone who's addicted to drugs, who just kind of reaches for the money wherever they can find it just to keep the process going. Consequences be damned.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Exactly. Tony, I'm interested on your thoughts of the idea of how long do they have to do the festival?
4 months.
4 months. On that level of a festival.
4 months, they were talking about building all these houses, housing everybody at the venue.
Well, they were going to hold it on a complete different island in the beginning until they used Pablo Escobar's name. And then they said, no, you're done.
The Escobar family said no.
4 months, no way.
How long does it take to do like a breakaway or something like that, which much smaller scale?
Planning is a year.
So
we already have the infrastructure, though. Like the plans are already done because we keep doing the same thing every year as far as stage production. Maybe a little bit different change in lighting shows and things like that, but the overall layout of the ground is usually the same.
Mm-hmm.
And their idea was like, here's this island that Pablo Escobar used to own, and then they're like, oh, we can't do that. Let's get this other one. And it was just from the get-go. It was just.
You're talking about a guy that was into technology and an entrepreneur that had no idea how to throw a show.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people see these music festivals and they think, oh, there's a lot of people there. I have the money. Let's put a team together and let's do this. Well, it doesn't work like that with no experience at all, bottom line.
Yeah.
And you've seen that happen firsthand.
Oh, yeah. I had it happen to me, kind of. I was hired as a talent buyer for a festival locally here, and, the guy told me he had $400,000 in talent budget, and I'm like, all right, let's go,
We're getting Paris Hilton. We're getting Paul D.
This guy had no idea what he was doing, and he didn't even have $400,000. His whole concept was to put half money down on a big artist, start selling tickets, and then create a buzz and sell tickets and take that ticket money and book more artists and book more artists
and keep rolling it.
Yeah, it was terrible. And the guy he's done like 5K runs and does events like that, but he's not a music festival, like not even an event coordinator when it comes to entertainment like that. It's, and a lot of people don't think about all of the back end stuff that goes with it. Feeding your hands, the cost of feeding your hands, the people that are going to serve the food for your hands. Like there's so much behind it, it's ridiculous.
Right. Fulfilling all the riders.
Yeah.
The thing that drove me crazy, like watching the whole thing, like even though like I know the end already, right? But like I'm watching both documentaries and I'm like, why aren't you canceling yet? What are you like? How did it get this far?
Right.
That just blows my mind.
Ego.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the story, the Hulu story tells it shows a path of Billy being uber successful throughout his young adult life. He learned to read early, he learned to walk early, he was the top of his class and all this stuff, and he was creating he started like a pencil or crayon sharpening hustle like in 5th grade or something. So he always had this hustler mentality and he always won. And even going back to when he started the Magnesis thing, where basically it was this elite credit card for 20-somethings in New York. If you're new to this city, you become part of this elite
almost
group.
Like a private club membership kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, and they would help, and it was this swanky place in Manhattan, and you could go there for like wine tastings or just meetups and stuff like that. And you also got exclusive opportunities to get like VIP tickets for things like Hamilton and stuff like that. And because supposedly yeah, and what he was doing, he was taking money from other ventures and funneling into these ventures that he was fucking up and paying far more than he needed to for tickets, but trying to execute these things that he was saying he could deliver. So like you said, the drug addict mentality, like, well, okay, I fixed this problem, now how am I going to get high the next time? Okay, let me create another
just keep pushing,
funding source,
kicking the can down
let me create
the road.
another funnel. And it just kept going. So because he had never failed in anything, he didn't have any reason to think like, oh, we should just cancel this.
Right.
What are some of the craziest things that you guys saw in the documentaries, like details that you didn't know? Because the web was so deep,
I didn't really
more
know
than we
much
knew
about
from the headlines.
festival. Period. I knew about it, but I didn't know the details and the extent that they were going with all of this stuff until I actually watched the documentary. I knew it was something planned by Ja Rule and this guy, but I didn't really dive deep into it. I wasn't going to it, and it didn't have anything to do with me, so I was just like, whatever.
It definitely.
But when I watched this stuff, let's see, paying Kylie Jenner $200,000 to post it on her Instagram.
Yeah.
Right.
How many tickets you got to sell just to recoup that post?
Yeah.
People
Right.
don't think of that.
Yeah.
Just that in itself, And if tickets are what would you say, $500?
$500 for the lowest
GA,
Yeah.
right? So that's what 4,000 tickets, GA tickets, you have to sell just to recoup what Kylie Jenner did.
One
You know what I
Instagram
mean?
post. Yeah.
But I was listening to it, and it was the Netflix when he said it was at night, and they were shooting the commercial, and they wanted the girls to jump in the water. And the girls were like, why do you want me to jump in the water? Oh, because we need that money shot. We need that shot. We need these people to see that. Well, why do you want people to see that? Because we're trying to get to your average, everyday loser
Right.
American.
We're selling a pipe dream.
You know what I mean? We're
to
selling
your
a pipe
every-
dream to
Yep.
your average, everyday loser. Like, what the fuck kind of mentality is that?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like, it pisses me off to no end.
Right.
But
Well,
that
especially
right there,
because that's not the scene, or that's not the vibe that people like us came up in. We've been involved in rave scenes and underground warehouse scenes and all of that stuff for the better part of 2-3 decades. And it's infuriating to know that there are people out there who have exploited it to that level. There's always been people who have taken advantage and exploited, and those people usually weed themselves out of a scene once people catch on to who they are.
But that was the sole intent purpose of this, was to exploit. Because in the Hulu one, when they showed that video, it's like, all these people he would never party with, and this could be you. And there's just like some normal dude like right in the middle of the crowd.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you really think that's possible?
Well, people thought it would be.
Exactly.
And they were willing to pay.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
And they were willing to pay, a couple grand for the potential to be within that small sphere even if it was just for 72 hours.
Yeah, that was their goal. They were focused towards the millennials. You know, the rich millennials that were born between 1980 and 1995, 94, 95 or something like that. Yeah, and it's all they do all day long is this. You know what I mean? And if something sparks their interest, and it's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like what you see on the internet. Everybody believes all that stuff, and it's.
I think
a good job at marketing.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because when you asked what's some of the most extreme, things or the most wild things, I've got one in particular. I think I'm sure it's on all of our minds. Nobody wants to just come right out and say it. I mean, they had to get the water, right?
Yes, they had to get the water.
Yes, let's talk about how they had to get the water.
But that aside, that was probably the most profound part for me, aside from the shock value of that particular scene, is that, early on when they're talking about the social media engineering, and it's not that, I mean, some of it we do on our own, I mean, like when we plan events for 3DM and stuff like that, we have dedicated street teams, we have dedicated people, we pull, these influencers in our own scene together, and then we have dedicated launches, and we have, these concerted efforts to get the buzz going and to get people interested. I mean, that's how you do things. But that was the crazy part, is the level that they went to do that. All these, super hot supermodels, and then, Ja Rule and all of this stuff, and then the commercial and all of, and Jerry Media being involved and all of that stuff. And then the launching part was genius.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I mean, a yellow tile, Fyre Festival, hashtag, bam.
Click here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, so yes, it was attention grabbing. Yes, and it was all of the people who follow that stuff. It was very, very well engineered, and that, I think, to the level that it was engineered, executed, and received. I honestly kind of wish this damn thing actually happened, just because, when you put that much oomph behind it, because now, old shitheads like us, we all see it for what it is, and we're all like, we already have a certain skepticism about all that shit, but how many people in that millennial generation, or especially the people who went, and got stuck on the island and had this terrible experience, how much skepticism did that implant in them? Or are they ready to shell out another $5,000 for the next exclusive thing,
$175,000, right? That's what it was costing to get through customs, the water.
Oh, the water, yeah.
So there's $375,000 just for one post and to get some water.
And to get some
Bahamas. Now, how many tickets you have to sell? You know what I mean? Like, it's
infrastructure alone. I mean, they had to hire how many locals to construct houses and all the FEMA tents and like all of that stuff. I mean, day laborers. I mean, yeah, they're. I'm assuming down in the Caribbean, they're not. They don't have all of the worker
unions
protections
and
stuff behind them like we do. But I mean, all of that stuff still comes at a cost. And I mean,
but one thing to add on to that situation, just to give everyone else background, what was happening that same weekend was like the National Regatta, which is like they said equivalent to the Super Bowl.
Christmas.
It's bigger than Christmas.
Right.
So, all the hotels are sold out, all the rental cars are gone, all the laborers are, spread out to support all this stuff. Now you have this other event trying to draw workforce and resources from that as well.
Right.
And they said there were people working for, 18, 20 hours straight, getting a couple hours nap and then coming back.
That's one thing I do at all my events is research the date. Make sure nothing else big is going on around when you go to the Broadway show.
When people told him not that you can't do it this weekend because of the regatta.
Right.
And no.
Meh.
Yeah, going back to your question, why are you still doing this?
Yeah. It was just it seemed like there was nothing that was going to stop him short of just it falling apart the way it did. I mean, people landed on the island. That should have never happened. That's just insane to me.
Yeah.
And one thing that like I said, the Netflix documentary did a better job doing is tell how it really screwed over the locals, and they one thing that kind of, it just broke my heart watching that the woman towards the end
that owned the cafe.
Yeah, that owned the cafe, and so what ended up happening is when these people arrived on the plane, they kind of shipped them off. They obviously things weren't ready, so they kind of shipped them off to another part of the island where there was a bar, and they had the bar owners had no idea that these people were coming.
Under normal circumstances, that would be great because that's business.
Yeah,
but what'd she say? Like 5 busloads of people just showed up.
They just appear, and you're like, okay. And so, it turns into this whole big thing, and at the end of the day, because of all the labor that she had to pay for and everything, she ended up clearing out her entire life savings. She had like $50,000 or something saved up that she paid out of her own pocket so that her employees wouldn't suffer, and she just took that hit for it, and she started like breaking up and talking about how like it's hard for her to even talk about it. She's like, I don't like to talk about this because it's ruined me, basically. And man, that just twisting the knife.
On a side note, I'm not sure at what level, but I did see a GoFundMe that was started for her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I wonder how many people got PTSD from that.
I don't know.
Being stuck on an island.
Well, there's people that got locked in the airport.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, things got pretty silly there by nightfall. With just running around with those shitty mattresses.
Well, let's back up a little bit. So the first there's some people that are kind of sketched out, that they're at their respective airports, and some people are like, I don't know, I'm not going because I haven't heard X, Y, or Z. I don't have any travel arrangements. I don't have this and that. So some people, their spidey senses were going off, and they decided not to go. But there were other people that were like, nah, I'm all in. I'm doing this. And then at a certain point, one of the acts cancels and posted on social media, and it was Blink 182.
Blink 182.
And they said, hey,
that's not much of a loss. Right? I'd still go.
but they're
Diplo's going to be there, right?
Yeah. The message that
Here's
they posted,
your holiday.
Yeah. The message that they posted was something to the effect of like, we don't think they can support our what we're trying to do for a quality show. Sorry, blah blah blah. So then now there's other people who are like, okay, that second wave of people is like, I'm not going either. But then other people are like, no, we're still going. So their private jet shows up, and it's a smaller aircraft, like a 737 or something, and it looks like someone took like some print shop stickers and branded the jet with the Fyre logo and all that stuff. So you have all their influencers and starting to present a little bit of a questionable attitude. They're like, okay, this is where
I take issue. This is where I take issue, because I'm sorry if any influencers are out there watching this.
Why aren't you sponsoring us?
I don't. Yeah. Right. Why aren't you? But this is where I totally take issue. At what point do you lose all fucking common sense? This is a large scale festival. They're trying to bring, what was it, 10,000 people, or 20,000?
Yeah, 20 or 30, I think.
And you think that there's going to be a private jet that's going to escort each one of your prissy asses from one?
They're influencers, man.
But I don't, no. Come on.
Because they thought they were going to be flown in those little private propeller jets.
Right. It cuts to one chick, and she's all like, this is just some regular commercial jet.
This is like flying coach.
Right.
Oh my God.
I had trouble having sympathy for her, but do you think that the overall, the backlash that the general attendees got was
honestly
justified?
If you're paying, that ticket for the jet was what, $12,000?
Yeah, if you had airfare or something, that's when the next tier jumped up.
If you're paying $12,000, I could see getting a private jet. You know what I mean?
But so that's the whole thing. I think it's what bill of goods were you sold. So, but at the same time, if that would have been me in that position, yes, I would have been pissed. I paid $12,000, but at the same time, I'd have been like, oh yeah, they're trying to cart how many people from one side of the ocean to the other? I guess it makes sense, but I mean coming from our standpoint is and you from a mobile, and you've thrown shows before, something inevitably always goes wrong.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
So I mean, and
like a last minute rainstorm, for example.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So but
couldn't happen to a better group of people.
Right. So but that's kind of my point, is that if I'd have been in that situation, that's exactly what it would have went through my head. Oh, something must have happened, private jet charters or something, or it was too expensive or something happened. So this was their compromise. This was their way of fixing the problem.
Right.
I could have been a little bit more forgiving than that, but I don't know.
The attitude.
To answer your question, I don't know that they deserved. I don't know that deserving is the right word, because we are in like this total weird, and if I'm gonna start going down a rabbit hole we don't want to get into, feel free to pull me out. But we are in a weird time in our society where we are all about outrage culture and pointing fingers and blaming this and you're a fucking idiot, and it's all diverging into like total tribalism, and you got to be careful where the lines are to determine where you actually stand with any given group of people. Millennials in general have caught a whole load of shit just for simply taking advantage of the benefits of technology and the conveniences that we've put out there. Mm-hmm. This is all just, our evolution as a country. So you can't get mad at people for being on their phones all day when we're pushing phones in their hands all day.
Yeah, when I'm at the restaurant and there's a younger family and they're shoving iPads in front of their kids, to keep them quiet. And then, when I'm, a leader in corporate America and I have a 20-something-year-old and I have to explain to him he can only use his social media when he's on his break.
Right.
I can't get frustrated about that.
Right.
I have to understand.
So so that's a long-winded way of coming around to say I don't think that they deserved all of the backlash that they got, though some of it was fucking funny. Funny as in execution of witty sarcasm,
right.
And all that. Not funny as in the
like,
experience. Idiot. But because no matter who you are, no matter how much that you paid for this experience or whatever, if you're sold a bill of goods, you're promised a certain experience or something for the money that you are. I don't care if it's $50 or $5,000. Mm-hmm. If they don't own up to what they promised you, well, then that's not right.
So as our resident millennial,
I'm a zennial just for clarification.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that there weren't a lot of parts of both documentaries, especially the Hulu one, I think, that didn't make me feel kind of icky about how susceptible to influence my generation is when it comes to all this like smoke and mirrors, social media stuff, and also the fact that let's be honest, there's some degree to which we take part in that as content creators. We have Instagram profiles and we're posting the best version of ourselves and, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, how much of this is just us participating in culture and how much of this is perpetuating the problem?
Right.
It really kind of makes you think about that a little bit.
Well, I think the difference of, like, I'll take, a 3DM product, for instance, like Tony will ask us to do certain things at certain times whenever he's launching something. And I believe we're executing tactics. We are trying to achieve a swell or whatever. We are not applying psychological manipulative actions in order to get people to come to Tony's shows.
We're advertising a three-dimensional event and what three-dimensional events stand for and what the expected experience will be. And it
helps that you have a history of success in this area too.
Exactly.
And where the Fyre Media, I think, and this is the point I was going to bring up, where they, I think, went over the top. And I mean, it worked to a certain extent, and it does work, obviously, is that whole reference they kept talking about FOMO, the fear of missing out. And I think everything that they were doing was predicated upon that demographic experiencing that FOMO.
Yeah, it felt really exploitative.
Exploitative.
You know what I'm trying to say.
They were taking advantage of people.
Yes.
That's a lot of syllables. I'm going to give you 60 points for that.
I think that was the whole meat and potatoes of their strategy, was to manipulate people's fear of missing out on this once in a lifetime event.
Right.
Should we finish telling the story about the water?
No, Jesus.
Sure.
No. So everybody arrives. They get to the area, where the festival is supposed to take place, and mind you, they're being driven there on school buses, yellow school buses. They get to the site and they see essentially a FEMA camp, and people are starting to freak out.
Yeah, they were literally I think one of the documentaries said they were leftover tents from Hurricane Matthew or something.
They were literally FEMA tents.
So apparently the water was ordered, the water arrived,
but had not been paid for.
And was stuck in customs. Yeah. So my only question on this before we go any further is, how did they know that would work?
I wondered that too.
How did that become a topic of conversation?
They probably already had to deal with customs how many times to get stuff there, so they probably knew dude was
down with that.
Down.
Type of stuff.
Okay, so
they had done research.
Yeah, so I forget the guy's name or even what his and his capacity was.
The event coordinator.
So
producer.
Right. So
and I think as he identified himself as the token homosexual.
Right. Then Billy calls him and says, "We need you to take one for the team and go down there and suck the customs official's dick to get the water out." And I was like, and I'm like, okay, so that's so that alone, that's total douchebag move. I mean, that putting anybody in that kind of a situation, not only is that exploitive, it's terrible. Like that. Right.
Now Tony has asked me to do some things when I worked for him at festivals. He's asked me to squeegee a stage. He's asked me to help a girl up on the stage so the artist could grind with her. He's asked me to, go
just
run
get
and grab this.
Of
yeah, but he's never asked me to perform a sexual act on anybody, and I thank you for that.
10 sack of White Castles, though?
Yeah.
Oh, when you said 10 sack, that's not where I thought you were going.
Nice.
But just for someone to have the audacity to...
Right. Not just to... and that's, that's exactly what I was like...
He totally devalued...
Right.
He didn't ask. He said, "I'm going to need you to."
Yeah.
Right. and so all of that is already up here at the forefront of my mind. I mean, because that's the shock factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who the fuck are you, and what in the hell is wrong with you? But then, after I get past that initial processing, then I was like, wait, how does he know the customs official is gay?
Yeah.
How did that even become a solution to the problem? Mm-hmm. And they don't ever go into that, but I was just that's the level of fuck upness that this whole thing was at.
That's a word.
Yeah.
And the thing that really struck me was guy was gonna do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like, I went home, I took a shower, I
brushed my teeth,
and I went down and met this guy, and luckily it didn't work out that way.
Right.
And I mean, just holy moly, man! How little do you respect yourself to stoop to that level just to make sure this douchebag's event goes off? And that's, I mean, that either shows that.
But what kind of mind control did he have to get people to do all these crazy things?
Right.
That the level of stress and anxiety that was there too. I mean, just there was some sort of perfect storm of craziness, or
sometimes you don't know you're in a padded room until you're banging your head on the pads, right? The whole thing, with that, I've been in some situations in life where the crazy is all around you, so you think this is what's normal, or even worse is when you're invested into a failing project or product or group of people that are just all circling around this one goal, but this was never destined to do anything, but everybody's convinced that we're gonna pull it off in the 11th hour at 11:59. But it looks like there's no chance in hell, but we're gonna get this done. And then here comes midnight, and holy shit! So but when you're in the middle of all that crazy, It's very hard to take that step back and look at the forest for the trees, unless you get pushed to that brink of, here's my line in the sand. And yeah, I mean, there's that gray area where, like, you could step over this little morality point for a little bit and tiptoe around that line. And people can push into that to where you're uncomfortable. But everybody, I don't care who you are, everybody has something that will stop you dead in your tracks.
Sure.
And throughout that portion of the conversation in the documentary, people from different aspects of this operation are saying that this is not going to work. There's something wrong.
Right.
What's going on? Hey, why are we still moving forward with this?
Ego.
And then, and the guy leading the charge, he's like, no, we're good. Just keep going, keep doing it.
Yeah.
And to the point where I think they even issued like cease and desist orders to people within the teams that were trying to be honest.
No. If it was,
and people were fired for threatening to be honest.
And people, and even even the whistleblowers, the people who were out there who were trying to warn.
Creating those other social media accounts like Fyre Fraud, I think was one of them.
Yeah, Fyre Festival fraud.
Yeah. I think Fyre Fraud would have went better.
but
Fyre Festival Fraud. That is too many. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, because those guys they were posting images of the campsite,
right?
Still looking disheveled and hosed up, and asking all these just like poignant questions to the people that might possibly be following this social media, like, hey, where's all these luxury tents?
Right.
Hey, so and so hasn't said that they're going to be at this show. Why aren't they posting?
And it was a picture of the cheese sandwich that broke it all.
Yes.
Oh, I know,
the cheese
right?
sandwich.
Here's our luxury meal.
Yeah.
Man.
It's funny that was the thing, though, because that was hardly the biggest problem, was the quality of the food. But it was just, it showed it perfectly in a picture, I think, and it's more of the same kind of social media life that we live now, is it takes something like that to grab your attention,
So people are showing up, they're coming up with rudimentary systems to assign people to these tents, and more people keep showing up. And finally there's a line a couple hours long, and McFarland decides to just stand up on a picnic table and tell everybody, just go grab a tent.
They're like, we paid like thousands of dollars for a villa, and he's like, go into your FEMA tent.
Yeah.
Go grab a soaked mattress and drag it to a FEMA. And there's like no assignments, nothing, so it becomes this free for all.
So if you guys didn't catch that, the night before the festival starts, there's a torrential rainstorm and soaks everything. Mattresses,
tents, mud everywhere. Yeah.
So the little progress they had made.
Yeah.
Right. So I do think that one of the criticisms that I think it was the Hulu one really kind of brought out once it got to that point. That is one thing that I don't think is a millennial specific trait. I think that's a human trait.
The survival trait,
right? Because the Hulu one did beat up so much on millennials and stuff, so they didn't come right out and say, oh, and all these millennial kids, started acting like the kids from Lord of the Flies. But they did grab a snippet of Lord of the Flies and played it a couple of cut scenes, and I was like, okay, I see what you're going for there, but that's not a millennial specific thing.
No.
If you are stuck in a situation like that, lots of high stress, people are pissed, and and the food is a cheese sandwich. There's a lot of things going on there. So when somebody says, go survive, it's going to turn into the Hunger Games. I don't give a shit
but not
what
even
generation you're
not
from.
even survival, that mob mentality.
Yeah.
Because they referenced Woodstock in the one in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
When they burnt the place down and destroyed all the ATM machines, and people were getting assaulted.
Yep.
And then going back to my parents' generation with Altamont, where they hired the Hells Angels to be security guards, because whoever thought that would be a bad idea. So mob mentality exists. It just takes, you throw a rock into a crowd, and then,
Well, plus the one thing that they succeeded in getting to the island was $2 million worth of alcohol. So you take all these people who you're fucking over
and get them drunk,
and sunburnt and have nothing to eat or drink,
and literally funneling. There's scenes of people funneling, bottles of liquor.
Tequila.
We're not even talking about beer. We're not talking about shotgunning beers or anything. We're talking vodka and
I honestly, I was almost impressed that it like I thought it should have been way worse. Like that aspect of it. Like I'm really surprised that it wasn't.
And although they didn't come out and outwardly say it, but I was surprised that there were no medical injuries.
Right.
I mean at least they were publicized.
There was one guy that had like heat exhaustion or something.
Had to go to the local hospital.
But to me,
Halabadid broke a nail. Just kidding.
But for it to be that level of a shit show, for me as a medical person, I was very, very surprised that there weren't more heat-related injuries and hospitalizations, because that, no shade, hot, alcohol, young, those things don't usually mix well when it comes to medical situations. So.
Right.
And then just being stuck there and not being able to do anything about it, you know. A mild medical problem becomes serious pretty quick when you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
Now, the shit show is at its pinnacle, I guess. People are trying to get off the island. There's not enough jets to get people off the island. They're locking people in the airports, which is very unsafe.
Well, no, if you remember, there was a cutscene to one of the like airport security or somebody who worked at the airport.
Oh, he said he didn't want him to go running around the flight line, which they probably would have.
Right. And he said there's fuel tankers, there are all kinds of stuff. He was like, the last thing you need is somebody going out there smoking a cigarette. And,
I think that was the Netflix one, that they covered.
I don't remember which one.
I think it was Hulu.
Yeah. Okay. That's hard for me to remember. I watched them both like right in a row.
Same.
So.
Oh, that one's done? Next.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But so I understand the logic behind it, but at the same time, turning people into prisoners probably isn't the greatest thing. Like, I don't. But because they were on the tourist island there, I get that there was nowhere else to send them, but like at least lock the doors to the places you don't want them to go, or allow people the ability to leave, especially if there's no food, no water, like that just.
Like even if nothing else, just the panic that you're going to give somebody who's in that situation already, and they're like, wait, we're stuck here and have nothing to drink, and like what are we doing here? And also you have to be stuck in this box now.
Right.
Yeah.
What?
And then some of the workers are the local workers are trying to like get their money. They're getting angry. They're getting upset to the point where people that were working for Fyre Media are trying to escape from the compound.
They're talking about taking them hostage.
Yeah. Because they want their money. Those local day laborers have worked. They just want to get paid.
Right.
And therefore creating a very hostile situation, and McFarlane's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which brings up the next crazy part, which was, I don't know if maybe I'm skipping ahead here, but after all is said and done and everything, fails horribly, eventually McFarland is he's currently serving in jail like 6 years, but he was out on bail for a while, and he just went right back to scamming people immediately, basically kind of doing a similar thing that he was doing with the credit card.
VIP experiences type
just
stuff.
selling VIP access to tickets that didn't exist, like selling meet and greets with Taylor Swift, who notoriously doesn't do that, and tickets to Hamilton and all these things that he just didn't have.
Super Bowl tickets was another one.
It's like when you have this giant magnifying glass over you right now, it's just it just blows my mind that you think you can even attempt something close to that.
Right, and all he did was just get some other schmuck, to be the name and the face behind it, and here's the email list, and and all that stuff, and here's a script. Here's what you say to people.
Yeah,
and that
when I first watched it, I thought the guy, before I saw that part where he said that he was just trying to sell these kids a pipe dream, I thought he was just a passionate guy that saw,
it's got in over his head.
A really good opportunity, to bring people together to promote this brand, which it is. It's a really good way to do it. But then when he said, I'm trying to sell these people a pipe dream, you knew right then and there you weren't going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? Like
he's a garbage person.
Not even 30 minutes in to the fucking Netflix documentary when he said that.
So can I ask another question now? And if and I understand that like things are different when you're in different income brackets, but my question is, what about these venture capitalists? What about these people that were just throwing money at him?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the what was her name?
I can't remember her name.
She was the wife of some hedge fund manager who had butt tons of money that really liked him.
Wasn't it like, I mean, millions of dollars that her alone, like, and that's just all gone. Like, and I get that that she's probably being scammed just as much as everybody else, but I mean, at some point,
are you asking whether she's a victim or if she has some responsibility in this?
I mean, I guess that's a good question, but at the same time, like, because it's just a lot of money that at some, like, why wouldn't somebody ask some questions? Like, I'm throwing all of this money.
He was falsifying those financial sheets and sending them to people, and the fake wire transfers and everything. So he gave the appearance, or he was overvaluing the organization. He was sending people fake financial reports,
right.
And they were like, "Oh, okay, well, this guy's worth a shit ton of money." Like, yeah, I want to. You want to make some juice? Yeah, here's a couple mil.
It's terrifying because it's like it makes me go, how many times have I just looked at a sheet with some finances on it and just took it at face value and accepted it? You know
what
I mean?
I'd really also like to know is if he had all this money thrown at him to do this, where did it go?
Yeah.
Because there wasn't anything built.
No.
Where's that money lying?
Right.
Yeah, who knows?
You know, and another scenario that a lot of people don't look about, when you're booking artists, a first-year festival especially, you're sometimes required to put 100% of that money up front to the agent for the artist. How do you have all these artists build, promoting the fact that these artists are going to be there, and in one of the documentaries, none of them were ever paid?
Right.
So how in the hell did you even market this without having any money invested into the artist?
And how did they not explode at that?
And I think one of the things they said is like the offers that they were getting for these artists was over market. Mm-hmm. Which was a red flag to some of these people.
The guy said that they overpaid for Major Lazer, I think, in Disclosure. I think it was. But I mean, still, Major Lazer, instead of paying 50, you pay 100,000. You still should be paying, even if you have a connect and you pay half up front, it's still 50,000 for that artist up front. There wasn't any money paid to these artists. So how did he market those artists and market this festival with these artist names on it with no money down?
Right, because it's not like they were keeping that information to themselves. They were blasting it all over the internet.
Right.
Yeah, I wondered the same thing. Like, how did all of their agents not go,
Right.
Take me off of that.
And blow them up, you know. It's like nobody was listening. I don't know if maybe some of them did.
Right.
Maybe they believed in it because Ja Rule had a part of it.
Right,
but I mean, Ja Rule isn't the most responsible candidate in the world.
Yeah, he's been in jail for tax evasion already.
Right.
Yeah. And if you notice, too, one thing that I noticed is once it all come burning down, Ja Rule, I didn't have anything to do with it. It wasn't mine. You know what I mean? Like when you specifically said that it was your concept. You said that clear as day. And when you're sitting down at the panel, you know, at the expo in Vegas, and he says, "Oh, I'm gonna let Billy explain it to you." Why? Because you know nothing about it.
Yeah, you just putting your name on it.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's smelled scam all the way from the get, man. Like,
and so, then, as we said earlier, in the Hulu version, they actually talk to McFarlane. And there's a couple things that he says in there that I'm just like,
it was kind of fun to watch him squirm, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So to me, the one that jumps out is when the interviewer asks him about.
I cannot talk about ongoing investigations.
Yeah. But the one where he's like, so you promised all these villas and blah, blah. He's like, I had paper receipts for all these villas and a box full of house keys and for the rental cars and everything. And so he's like, so what happened to the box? It was lost.
Yeah, I lost the box of keys.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, is that all?
You had one key
You had one.
for all these houses and villas and rental cars.
Yeah.
And like, when it kind of reminds me of the whole O.J. Simpson thing where you say a lie enough times, you start to believe it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you could kind of see that in his eyes where he had rehearsed these things and said them so many times that he's actually starting to believe them. Or he's trying to convince himself that what he's saying is true.
Yeah, there was a moment or two in the Hulu documentary where you could almost see him realizing
what he was saying.
Some things about his own situation, like, oh wait, I actually believe this, but that's messed up.
Yeah,
like it's like it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I I'm sure that at this stage of life, we've all encountered a Billy McFarland at some point in our lives, and that's the whole thing. Like you said with the Spidey sense, like everybody's got a little bit of intuition, and I mean, I can spot that shit. Like, and maybe part of it is that I already knew what I was looking at once I turned on the TV, and I knew what I was going to be looking at. But there were like half a dozen people that came to mind as I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him talk and I'm watching his mannerisms and all that stuff, and I'm just like, yeah, I know half a dozen people that are this guy that have been scamming people, or and just those mannerisms. It's those things that once you get burned once or twice by somebody like that, then you tend to build a wall or some defenses against that, because I'll bet you to the untrained eye, that guy was, I mean, he was great at selling, whatever. I mean,
they said too at the end, they said that they'll probably see him again. Hey, how about that? All right. They said they'll probably see him at the end because he's good at.
He's good. He's a good salesperson.
Yeah, he's only going to be in jail for 6 years.
Yeah, so, and he's teaching music production to the prisoners.
I didn't even know he was a music producer.
Right.
Yeah.
And 6 years fed, he'll probably do like 3 to 4.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you guys think, like, just speaking to the documentaries, do you think that this is going to do good things or bad things for, like, our scene or the festival?
I think it'll make people a lot more cautious. Yeah. That's for sure. People are going to be leery of a new festival, but that festival had so much. I mean, a treasure hunt with really $1 million
treasure
prize.
hunt. Yeah.
There's just so many things that didn't add up. But a lot of people don't see that. They just see, oh man, I got a chance to win $1 million. It's like going to McDonald's. I have a chance of winning $100,000 on Monopoly. I don't think I've ever seen anybody win $100,000 on McDonald's Monopoly.
Right. And just knowing what I know about putting on a show,
I get a bunch of Egg McMuffins.
I got some fries.
I die trying. Yeah.
The occasional McFlurry.
Yeah. Just from the little bit of work and the little bit of behind the scenes I've seen with working with Tony, like, obviously people didn't know that they had thought of this and they were going to execute in 4 months. But if I saw a show that was being announced 4 months out, I'd be like, what? A show this big,
right?
You're announcing 4 months out.
Everybody in the industry knew that it wasn't going to happen. Behind the scenes, like a lot of the professionals knew that it wasn't going to happen. There's no way in 4 months, no way.
But I think when you have those rich VCs, the venture capitalists, and they saw what he was throwing out there, with them not having any understanding of what it takes to put on a production like he was trying to describe, it was probably easy for them to say, oh, well, like I was saying earlier, let's flip some money. Here's a couple mil.
Yeah, you're going to sell a villa for $250 for sure. Let's do it. Yeah, come on.
Right.
But then also, as we saw with the Bernie Madoff stuff, when he was doing the Ponzi schemes and scamming people out of their money, rich people are very reluctant to let other people know that they got scammed. Mm-hmm. So what better group of people to try and get money from?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, who wants to be that example?
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, I was, quote unquote, dumb enough to get screwed by this, or
I think my answer to your question is that I don't think it'll do much, because for the type of festival that they were trying to pull off there, I mean, you're in the same realm as like a Coachella or something like that, right?
They were trying to be the next Coachella,
right? And there's so much that negative things that are said about Coachella. And yet every year their attendance keeps going up. Like,
fair point.
I mean, and there's a lot of really negative shit that's said about Coachella. Like the people who run it, the people who own it, whatever, and then the actual like site. Putting that many people out in a desert. 120 degrees. Whatever.
Do you have any examples offhand? Because I don't really know what's going on with that.
From what I understand, it's only been what I've seen in like comment sections. I haven't researched it like in depth.
Disclaimer.
Right. Like, but
just what you saw on Reddit.
Right. Just stuff like that the people are like very culturally insensitive, the homophobia,
gotcha.
Like just have values and ideas that don't match up with the type of scene that they're throwing a show for, that sort of thing.
They're just there to collect a check.
Yeah, right. And I mean, and that is what it is. Like, I think I may have seen like one Coachella lineup where I thought, if I lived out there, maybe I'd go, but like for the most part, and wasn't Coachella where they did the 3D or the hologram Tupac?
Yeah,
I mean that was pretty cool. But so just knowing that I mean even take a way smaller scale, back here to our local scene, there's people who have come and gone. But they've come in, they've exploited the scene, they've thrown shows, they've done all the thing, and had a really negative reputation that builds around them. But people still kept going to their shows.
That's true.
So and I mean that's just that's just when people want to have a good time. If you're selling what they're buying, then people will go for it. So I think ultimately it'll be some finger pointing, and it's an anecdotal story, but I don't think it'll have that much of an effect.
A ripple.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to change much. People are going to forget about it.
The only reason I think I asked the question is because the documentaries bring this into mainstream light.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas it's normally not, and it kind of makes me think of like Rave Act.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. I think one thing to watch out for, though, is that for a couple of years now, even though festivals are as huge as they are, there has been some people, or there have been articles and people who have said, how long is this festival thing, this mega festival thing, sustainable? Mm-hmm. At some point, it's got to reach a pinnacle, and then it's got to, head back down, head back downward in terms of attendance and all of that, because it can only get so big, right?
Mm-hmm. And after watching that, it's hard not to think of that as kind of the crash,
the zenith
of the
right.
And I think looking back to when Tony and I were younger, like the Monsters of Rock tours, when you had these big, Metallica and Van Halen and all these guys just filling these arenas, it just got to a certain point, and then it stopped.
Right.
It didn't really die off slowly, if I remember correctly. It just sort of just stopped because people.
No, Guns N' Roses ruined it for everybody.
when Axl dove off the stage.
No, when Axl destroyed the Nutter Center here in Dayton.
Oh, he did?
What?
Oh yeah, you guys.
That's before my time, man.
That was.
Was it as bad as when Limp Bizkit tore up that Sunoco?
What year was that?
I don't even remember.
Was that 89, 90?
It was the Nutter Center?
Yeah.
It was after 90.
No, it was Appetite for Destruction tour, wasn't it? And that came out in 88.
It was probably 91. When did the Nutter Center start? 90?
Was it? Okay, so
90.
Maybe it was after, but yeah.
I was just a young pup back then.
Oh, but
they came and wrecked it?
Yeah. Well, what happened? See, what happened is Axl decided not to come out, or like there was like some hub, but basically the whole place turned into
Imploded.
a riot. Yeah. Destroyed the place. Yeah.
Yikes.
But anyway, I digress. So yeah, I think ultimately, that could be a data point. If things start to
10 years in the future when we look back.
Yeah, and look at a graph and say, oh yeah, right here, like you said, the zenith, where now it starts to down. Right about there is when Fyre Festival happened.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, but maybe not. Because so much of our of that culture of our scenes are so dependent on disposable income, right? Mm-hmm. So as long as the economy's doing good, millennials are working. The economy keeps getting better. Now there's a lot to be said for wage stagnation and all of these other political things that we don't really get into this show. We dabble and we touch around it, but ultimately, what we do, what we provide, all of that stuff, it's all a commodity. It's all based on what's your disposable income and how much is that worth to you. So maybe if when the economy takes a dip, then it'll be interesting to see how the festival season fares, and if that somewhat coincides with this.
I don't want to see the economy take a shit, but I would be more than happy to see this festival scene kind of just slow down because.
Yeah, I mean. Because I'm not a festy person, so like I go, I think at some point we all go to movement. We aspire to go every year, but
we pledge to go. We pledge to make the pilgrimage.
But we don't
always work out.
Don't always work out. But Again, to the disposable income, but and movement's not getting any cheaper either. But because that's not my scene, I don't know that I want to see it go, because I mean, I can remember back in the 90s, I mean, that's what we were kind of aspiring for. It was like, let's make this legitimate mainstream, let's build the thing. There was some faction of us that were that, and then there was the other faction that was like, no, keep it underground, keep it underground. You know, so I mean, if the kids enjoy it and that's their thing, you know, then you know, I'm all for it. But it has kind of changed the way, you know, everything operates within this thing that was built off of the rave.
And you know, I think conceptually and like scene wise and like as far as the feeling of it goes, like I really like the underground thing.
Sure.
But that's inherently works against growth. Like if you're keeping it tamped down,
right,
it's gonna piddle out.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it's you kind of can't
It's a
have it both
double-edged sword,
ways.
yeah. I would personally like to see the dirty ass raves come back.
Oh yeah, I mean,
but that's just
you and me both.
It's a hard thing to do.
One day I'll buy a warehouse downtown, and that's what we'll do.
Well, I'm trying to buy a farm, so maybe we can do it there.
Well, you know, when we reached peak rave, it didn't go so well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What do you?
But I mean, I think just like anything in society, when it comes to social behavior, there's always this, you know, and like I gave the Lollapalooza incident, you know, with the. I can't remember what you call it, the alt rock or like Limp Bizkit and all that shit kind of came to a peak.
New metal.
Came to a peak, and then after that particular incident, I think looking at those data points, things started to try and trend down a little bit.
Or Woodstock '99?
I'm sorry, yeah, Woodstock '99.
I was going to say, wait, what happened to Lolla?
No, my bad, got him confused. But you know, seeing things like that come to a head, you know, are trigger points for something else new to come about. So
I mean, it could also start with rebranding. I mean, Rock on the Range is no longer, but there's something else coming in its place, which is Rock on the Range.
Yeah,
just a different name.
Yeah,
right.
Same company.
Yep.
Yeah, for those of you on the West Coast, it's equivalent to like the K-Rock Weenie Roast, you know, things like that, where it's just a bunch of bands at a stadium for several days. So.
All right, anything that we skipped over here? I'm sure there's plenty that we're going to kick ourselves for not bringing up, but there's just so much to digest in both of these documentaries.
Just realize that it's not that easy to throw a festival or an event, period. You know, I don't care how much money you have.
I was going to say, you can't throw money at everything.
No.
No matter how, and he tried. Well, allegedly he tried.
I mean, he had the best of the best in the industry, you know, but at the end of the day, if you as an owner don't know how to delegate all of that stuff and come up with a plan to make an event happen, or it's not going to work. It's not going to work. I didn't even see any security or anything on that. You know, I mean, just think of
oh my God,
of all that. You know, all those costs.
As bad as it was, it could have been so much worse for so many reasons, and I think that's what's so scary about it. Is this was horrifying, and yet it didn't go half as bad as it could have.
Yeah. Right. I think for me, my takeaway is that we in today's media culture and social media culture and all of that stuff, we need to always be very cognizant of the wrapping paper.
Shit ain't real.
Right. Like, I mean, everything from Instagram to the news you see, and I mean, everything. Like, everything is curated with a particular intent. So, you know, you can take any image, you can take any story, you can spin it any way you want. You can frame it, and if you just take everything at that face value, then you'll fall for anything. Yeah. And I think that's where, you know, like, I think people in general, and I'm included in this sometimes too, you know, but you know, being able to look past it with a little bit more of a skeptical or critical eye and say, okay, yeah, that's a pretty picture, but
show me some depth.
Right.
Marketing is a very powerful tool these days.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
It's almost the most powerful weapon at our disposal.
Yeah. I mean, a couple points for me, like, even if you're not into the electronic scene or the festival scene, I think it's a good watch just for the human psychology aspect of it. Yeah. You know, from the festival goers to Billy McFarland to the employees of Fyre Fest, and just listening to them trying to justify, rationalize, and the actualization of what was going on, and just seeing how everyone either did or did not take responsibility for what was going to happen. Even though it didn't happen, they saw the writing on the wall, and whether they choose to ignore it or just and stick their head in the sand, or they actually tried to be that whistleblower at the risk of losing their professional credibility within those circles. Just observing that part was, I thought, very interesting. And for me, as a parent of of teenagers right now who are ready, I have one in college, 3 in high school, who are the demographic that these people are preying on. This is one of those things I'm going to sit down and watch with my kids, and we're just going to talk about it, because I need to understand what they see in these documentaries.
That was exactly where I was about to go,
and how they perceive it, because I'm really curious to know what they are going to take out of these shows. Now, granted, they are created with spins in one direction or another, because it is a money-making venture, these documentaries, no matter what they say.
Right.
But I'm really interested to hear my children's read on these shows.
Yeah,
Sure.
that was kind of my final takeaway too. Is my stepdaughter's 11; she'll be 12 this year, and I don't see the issues that led to this problem. I don't see them getting any better by the time that she's right smack dab in the middle of that demographic, right? And so from that perspective, it's pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
I don't really know what the advice.
My oldest son very easily could have been on a plane headed there, real easy.
Yeah, it's scary.
Absolutely.
Because you're dropping.
I'm dropping 12 large.
Gs.
Yeah.
Making sure he's got a villa.
Only for Ibiza.
Right.
All right, folks. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/passionatedj. Get access to that monthly bonus episode. Check out our merch at passionatedj.com/merch. Hit subscribe on that YouTube channel, all the fun things. And I guess follow us on all our social media platforms. I say with reluctance after that conversation.
After we just got dissed in social media.
Please follow up. Take care, everybody. Keep on spinning. This has been the Passionate DJ Podcast.
Easy.
Alexa, order milk.
We're gonna leave that in there, right?